Life can change in an instant, and that was exactly what happened to me that fateful day in Madrid. I still remember the moment I received the call that would change my life forever. It was a sunny spring afternoon, and I was in my office, reviewing some documents when the phone rang. "Mrs. Martinez?" The voice on the other end of the line sounded grave and formal. "I regret to inform you that your parents have suffered a traffic accident on the M40 highway. Both died instantly." I felt like the ground was opening up under my feet. The words echoed in my head, but my mind refused to process them. My parents, the people who had given me life, who had raised me and loved me unconditionally, were gone in the blink of an eye. The next few days were a blur of tears, comforting hugs, and funeral arrangements. My daughter Sophia, 15 years old, was my anchor in the middle of the storm. Despite her own grief over the loss of her grandparents, she stayed strong by my side, holding me up when I felt like I couldn't move on. "Mom," she told me one night, as we were sitting on the couch in our house in Valencia, "grandparents will always be with us. We may not see them, but we will feel them in every corner of this house." His words, so mature for his age, reminded me that I still had a lot to live for. I had a wonderful daughter who needed me, and a life ahead that my parents would have wanted me to live fully. Weeks after the funeral, I found out that I had inherited the family home in Valencia. It was a beautiful 2-story property, with a garden full of orange trees that my mother loved so much. Every corner held memories of my childhood, of shared laughter and happy moments. At first, the thought of living there terrified me. How could I stand to be surrounded by so many memories? But over time, I understood that it was a gift. A place where Sophia and I could start again, without completely moving away from our roots. The move was a bittersweet process. Each object we unpacked brought with it an avalanche of memories. The old wall clock that my father always insisted on fixing, although it never worked properly. My mother's cookbooks, full of notes in the margins with her culinary secrets. One afternoon, while organizing my father's study, I found a letter addressed to me. With trembling hands, I opened it and began to read, "My dear daughter, if you are reading this, it means that your mother and I are no longer with you physically. But I want you to know that our love for you transcends any barrier, even that of death. This house has been our family home for generations. You were born here, and Sophia was born here. It is full of love, laughter, and precious memories. Now we leave it to you, so that you can continue filling it with life and new memories with your own family. Be strong, my girl. Life sometimes gives us difficult tests, but you have the strength to overcome them. Take care of Sophia, and allow yourself to be happy. It is what we wish most for you. We love you eternally." Dad and Mom. Tears ran down my cheeks as I read my father's words over and over again. It was as if they had given me one last hug, one last piece of advice to move forward. That night, as Sophia and I ate dinner in the kitchen, I felt a peace that I had not experienced since the accident. I looked at my daughter, thoughtfully munching her salad, and felt a surge of love and gratitude. "Sophia," I said softly, "how about we plant some flowers in the garden tomorrow? I think Grandma would have liked that." Sophia looked at me with a smile, her eyes shining. "I'd love to, Mom. We could plant roses. They were Grandma's favorites, right?" I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. "Yes, they were. And now they will be our favorites too." As we got ready to sleep that night, I stopped in the hallway and looked around. The house, which had at first seemed like a painful reminder of my loss, now felt like a warm hug. It was a place to heal, to grow, and to honor the memory of my parents. I laid Sophia down and kissed her on the forehead. "Good night, my love. Tomorrow will be a new day." "Good night, Mom," she replied, yawning. "I love you. And I love you, darling. More than you can imagine." As I headed to my room, I felt a mix of emotions. The pain of loss was still there, like a shadow in my heart. But with him, there was hope. Hope for the future, for the new memories we would create in this house, for the life that awaited Sophia and me. I lay down on the bed that once belonged to my parents and closed my eyes. For the first time in weeks, I didn't cry myself to sleep. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace. I knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be days when the pain would return with a vengeance. But I also knew I had the strength to face it. I had a home, I had my daughter, and I had the undying love of my parents guiding me. Tomorrow would be a new day, and we would be ready to face it together, in our family home in Valencia. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Little by little, Sofia and I began to adapt to our new life in Valencia. The family home was filled with new memories, mixing with old ones in a bittersweet symphony of past and present. However, as we seemed to flourish in this new chapter of our lives, I noticed that something strange was happening with Javier, my husband. At first, I attributed his mood swings and distancing to grief. After all, he had also lost his in-laws, whom he appreciated very much. But as time went by, his behavior became increasingly erratic and disconcerting. One Sunday morning, while I was preparing breakfast, I heard Javier talking on the phone in a low voice in the study. His tone was tense, almost conspiratorial. I crept closer to the door, feeling a pang of guilt for eavesdropping, but worry got the better of my sense of privacy. "Mom, I already told you it's not the time," I heard him say. Yes, I know. But we have to be patient. She's still vulnerable." "No, I haven't mentioned anything yet. Soon, I promise." My heart skipped a beat. What was Javier talking about with his mother, Carmen? What was it that he hadn't mentioned to me? Thousands of questions began to swirl in my mind, but before I could process what I heard Javier approaching the door. I walked away quickly, pretending to be busy with breakfast when he came into the kitchen. "Good morning, sweetheart," he said, kissing me on the cheek. I noticed that he was avoiding looking me in the eyes. "Have you seen my briefcase? I have to go to the office for a while." "On Sunday?" I asked, trying to keep a casual tone. I thought today we could spend the day as a family. It's been a while since the three of us went out together. Javier visibly tensed. "Sorry, it's an important project. I can't put it off. Maybe next week." And without further explanation, he left the house, leaving me with a plate of cold toast and a knot in my stomach. That night, when he finally returned, I tried to talk to him about our future plans. About how we saw ourselves in 5-10 years. But Javier dodged my questions with vague and evasive answers. "Come on, honey," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Let's live in the present. Why worry about the future now?" But I couldn't help but worry. With each passing day, I felt that Javier was getting further and further away. He no longer shared his work worries with me, nor did he tell me about his plans or dreams. It was as if we were suddenly two strangers living under the same roof. One afternoon, while cleaning our bedroom, I found a crumpled piece of paper in the pocket of one of his jackets. It was a brochure from a real estate agency in Barcelona. Was Javier thinking about moving? Why hadn't he told me anything? I decided to confront him that same night. After Sofia went to sleep, I sat with Javier in the living room. "Javier," I began, trying to remain calm, "I found this in your jacket." I showed him the brochure. "Is there something you want to tell me?" For a moment, I saw panic in his eyes. Then he quickly regained his composure. "Oh, that," he said with a forced laugh. "A co-worker gave it to me. He's thinking about investing in property there. It's nothing." I wanted to believe him. I desperately wanted to believe that everything was okay, that I was just being paranoid. But something inside me told me that there was more, much more than what Javier was telling me. The following days were torture. Every time Javier received a call, he walked away to talk privately. When he came home from work, he spent hours locked in the studio, supposedly working on important projects. But when I asked him about these projects, his answers were vague and unconvincing. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited for Javier to fall asleep and sneaked into the study. With my heart pounding, I turned on his computer. I felt horrible for invading his privacy like this, but I needed answers. What I found left me cold. There were emails exchanged with real estate agents in Barcelona, inquiries about schools in that city, and even a draft resignation letter from his current job. Everything indicated that Javier was planning a big change in our lives, and I had no idea. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what was happening. Why was Javier hiding all this from me? Did he no longer trust me? Or was there something else, something I didn't even dare to consider? The next morning, when Javier left for work, I called my best friend, Elena. Elena, I said, my voice breaking, I think Javier is hiding something from me. Something big. Honey, she responded softly, have you tried talking to him directly? I've tried, but he always evades my questions. And now I think he's planning for us to move to Barcelona without even consulting me. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Look, Elena finally said, I've known Javier for years. I can't believe he would do something like that without talking to you first. There must be an explanation. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that everything was a misunderstanding, that Javier would explain everything to me and we would laugh at my unfounded suspicions. But with each passing day, the distance between us grew more and more. One afternoon, while I was preparing dinner, I heard Sofia talking to Javier in the garden. Dad, she said, why are you spending so much time with Grandma Carmen lately? Mom is worried. My heart stopped. Carmen. Was Javier spending time with his mother without telling me? It's nothing, honey, Javier responded, his voice strained. I'm just helping her with some things. Don't tell your mother anything, okay? I don't want her to worry unnecessarily. That night, while Javier slept, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea, trying to gather my thoughts. What was really happening? Why did Javier spend so much time with his mother? And why was he hiding it from me? Carmen had always been a complicated figure in our lives. From the beginning of our relationship, he had made it clear that he did not consider me good enough for his son. Over the years, we had maintained a cordial but distant relationship. Now, the fact that Javier was secretly spending time with her filled me with anxiety. The following days were a nightmare of doubts and suspicions. Every time Javier was late, every text message he received, every call he made privately, everything fueled my fears. I tried to talk to him several times, but he always found an excuse to avoid the conversation. One night, while we were eating dinner in silence, Sofia looked at us both with concern. Is everything all right? He asked, his voice small and scared. You guys don't talk like you used to. Javier and I exchanged an awkward look. Everything's okay, honey, I said, forcing a smile. We're just a little tired. But nothing was right. And with each passing day, I felt like we were on the brink of something, although I didn't know exactly what. That day started like any other. I got up early, prepared breakfast for Sofia, saw her off when she left for school, and headed to work. The hours at the office passed slowly, with my mind constantly wandering to problems at home. The tension with Javier, his secrets, Carmen's shadow, everything was swirling in my head like an unstoppable storm. When my workday finally ended, I felt exhausted both physically and emotionally. All I wanted was to get home, take a hot bath, and maybe, if I plucked up the courage, try to talk to Javier one more time. But fate had other plans for me. When I reached the entrance to our house, I noticed something strange. There was a car I didn't recognize parked in front of the door. A chill ran down my spine. Did we have visitors? Javier hadn't mentioned anything this morning. With my heart racing, I put the key in the lock and opened the door. What I saw when I entered left me paralyzed on the threshold. The normally tidy and welcoming lobby was filled with boxes and suitcases. Some were open, overflowing with clothing and personal items. Others, closed and stacked, as if they were ready to be loaded into a moving truck. Xavier, I called, my voice shaking slightly. What's going on? I heard movement in the living room, and a moment later, Javier appeared in the hallway. His face was pale and tense, as if he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. Honey, he began, his voice sounding strangely strained, we need to talk. But before he could say anything else, another figure emerged behind him. My blood ran cold when I recognized Carmen, Javier's mother. He was there, in my house, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Surprise! Carmen exclaimed, in a tone that was intended to be cheerful but sounded rather triumphant. Isn't that wonderful? Let's all live together. I stood there, motionless, trying to process what was happening. Live together? With Carmen? In our house? Thousands of questions were rushing through my mind, but I couldn't articulate any of them. Javier took a step forward, his expression a mix of guilt and determination. "Listen," he said, "I know this is sudden, but it's best for everyone. Mom needs our help and—" "Our help?" I interrupted, finally finding my voice. "What are you talking about, Javier? This is our house, my parents' home. How can you make a decision like that without consulting me?" Carmen intervened, her voice honeyed but with an edge of steel. "Dear, I know it's a change, but think about how wonderful it will be. I'll be able to help with Sofia, I'll cook for everyone. It'll be like one big happy family." I felt like I was short of breath. The room seemed to spin around me. This couldn't be happening. It was as if he had entered a nightmare from which he could not wake up. "Javier," I said, fighting to stay calm, "I need to talk to you. Alone." But before we could move, the front door opened again. Sofia walked in, her backpack hanging from one shoulder. She stopped dead as she saw the scene in front of her. "What's going on?" he asked, his eyes moving from me to Javier, and then back to Carmen and the suitcases. Carmen rushed to hug Sofia. "Surprise, my girl. Grandma is moving in with you. Isn't that exciting?" Sofia visibly tensed in Carmen's embrace. His eyes searched mine, filled with confusion and concern. "Mom," he said slowly, "did you know about this?" I felt tears threatening to come, but I held them back. I wasn't going to break down, not in front of Carmen. "No, honey," I responded, my voice firmer than I felt. "This is a surprise to me too." Javier seemed to cringe at my words. "I was going to tell you," he murmured. "I was just waiting for the right moment." "The right time?" I repeated, disbelief coloring my voice. "And when would that be, Javier?" "When all the suitcases were inside and Carmen had already settled into our guest room." Carmen let out a forced laugh. "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. I'm sure that once you get used to the idea, you'll see how wonderful it will be." I felt anger begin to bubble up inside me. How dare they do this? How could Javier betray my trust like this? "Sofia," I said, trying to stay calm for my daughter's sake, "please go to your room. Your father and I need to talk." Sofia nodded, casting one last worried look before heading up the stairs. Once we heard the door to their room close, I turned to Javier and Carmen. "I want an explanation," I demanded. "Now." Javier began to speak, his words coming out in a rush. "Mom's been having some financial problems. Her house, well, she had to sell it. She has nowhere to go. I thought we could help her, just for a little while. And you didn't think to consult me first?" I asked, disbelief clear in my voice. "This is my house too, Javier. My parents' house. You can't just decide who lives here without talking to me." Carmen interjected, her tone condescending. "Dear, I know it's an adjustment, but think of everything I can do for you. I can take care of Sofia when you're working, I can cook, I can clean." "Carmen," I interrupted, struggling to maintain my composure, "I appreciate your offer, but that's not the point. The point is that this decision was made behind my back. In my own home." Javier tried to approach me, but I took a step back. "Please," he pleaded, "just give me a chance to explain. I have a plan. It will only be for a few months, until Mom can." But something in his tone, in the way he avoided looking me directly in the eyes, set off all the alarms in my head. There was more to this story, much more than what they were telling me. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not going to discuss this now. Not like this. Carmen, I'm sorry, but you can't stay here. Not tonight. Not until Javier and I have talked and come to an agreement." Carmen seemed to swell with indignation. "Are you kicking me out? Me, your husband's mother?" "I'm not kicking you out," I replied, fighting to stay calm. "I'm asking you to give us space to resolve this as a family. Our family." Javier looked torn, looking from his mother to me and back again. "Mom," he finally said, maybe it would be better if you stayed in a hotel tonight. Just until I can talk to." "Incredible!" Carmen exclaimed. "Are you going to let her kick me out like this? After everything I've done for you?" The tension in the room was palpable. I could sense that we were on the brink of something, an explosion that would change our lives forever. But before any of us could say anything else, We heard footsteps on the stairs. Sophia appeared in the hallway, her expression a mix of determination and nervousness. "I think," he said slowly, "that everyone should listen to what I have to say." The silence that followed Sophia's words was deafening. All eyes turned to her, who stood at the foot of the stairs, with an expression that mixed nervousness and determination. For a moment, I forgot about my anger and confusion, focusing completely on my daughter. "Sophia, honey," I began, trying to keep my tone calm, "maybe you should go back to your room. Your father and I need." But Sophia interrupted me, her voice firmer than I'd ever heard it. "No, Mom. I think everyone needs to hear this." Javier took a step forward, his face a mask of paternal concern. "Princess, we adults are having an important conversation. Please go to your room and—" "An important conversation?" Sophia's voice had an edge that I had never noticed before. "You mean how you plan to trick Mom?" Javier's face visibly paled. Carmen, who until then had maintained an indignant expression, now seemed to have seen a ghost. "What are you talking about, Sophia?" I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. Sophia took a deep breath and, to my surprise, let out a dry laugh. It was a strange sound coming from her, almost mature. "Dad," he said, looking directly at Javier, "you don't know anything, do you?" I saw how Javier began to shake. It wasn't a subtle tremor, was visible, as if he had suddenly been hit by a gust of icy wind. His face, which moments before had shown a mixture of guilt and determination, was now the spitting image of panic. "Sophia," Javier stammered, "I don't know what you're talking about, but I think we should." "No," Sophia interrupted, her voice surprisingly firm. "No more lies, Dad. No more secrets." I turned to my daughter, feeling a mixture of pride and fear. What did she know that I didn't know? How had he come to know? And, most importantly, why hadn't he told me before? "Honey," I said softly, "what's going on? What do you know?" Sophia looked at me, and for a moment I saw a silent apology in her eyes. Then, he turned his attention to Javier and Carmen. "I've been watching," he began. "Listening. Searching. And I know what they're planning." Carmen took a step forward, her face a mask of false concern. "Dear, I don't know what you think you heard, but I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. Adults sometimes have complicated conversations that children can misinterpret." "I'm not a girl," Sophia cut her off, her voice filled with a maturity that surprised me. "And I haven't misunderstood anything. I know everything." Javier seemed to be on the verge of collapse. His face had lost all color, and he could see beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "Sophia," he said with a trembling voice, "please, don't." But Sophia didn't give him the chance to continue. With a calmness that stunned me, he began to reveal what he knew. "Weeks ago," she said, "I started noticing that Dad was acting strange. He was always on the phone, whispering, and when he walked into a room, he would quickly change the subject. At first I thought it was because of work, but then—" He paused, and I could see him struggling to maintain his composure. My heart broke for her, for the burden she had been carrying alone. "One night," he continued, "I heard Dad talking to Grandma Carmen. They were discussing selling the house. Our house, Mom. Grandparents' house." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. "Sell the house? The house that my parents had left us, our home? That can't be true," I muttered, more to myself than to anyone else. But Sophia wasn't finished. "Not only that," he continued. "I heard Dad say that once they sold the house, they would use the money to pay Grandma Carmen's debts and to start a new business in Barcelona." Carmen let out a gasp. "That's ridiculous. Javier, tell your daughter to stop making up stories." But Javier didn't say anything. He stood there, motionless, like a pillar of salt. "I'm not making anything up," Sophia said, her voice shaking slightly. "I have proof. I found documents on Dad's desk. Sales plans, quotes from real estate agents, even a draft contract." I turned to Javier, searching his eyes for some sign that this was all a misunderstanding, a cruel joke. But what I saw in her eyes confirmed to me that every word Sophia said was true. "How could you?" I whispered, feeling my world crumbling around me. Javier finally seemed to find his voice back. It's not what it seems, he stammered. I wanted to secure our future. A new beginning for everyone. A new beginning, I repeated, incredulously. Selling my parents' house? Lying and cheating? Carmen tried to intervene. Listen, dear, I know it seems bad, but if you give us a chance to explain. No, I shouted, surprising even myself with the strength of my voice. I don't want to hear any more lies. I want you both to leave. Now. Javier took a step towards me, his eyes pleading. Please, let me explain. I have a plan. Everything will work out if. But Sophia interrupted him once again. You haven't heard the worst, Mom, he said, his voice now a whisper. I felt a chill run down my spine. How could there be anything worse than this? What else? I asked, fearing the answer. Sophia took a deep breath, as if she was gathering all her strength. They have a plan to keep you away from me after they sell the house, he finally said. I heard Dad and Grandma Carmen arguing about putting you in a psychiatric clinic. Using your grieving for your grandparents as an excuse. The world seemed to stop around me. Sophia's words echoed in my ears, but my mind refused to process them. Intern me? Walk away from my own daughter? Javier looked like he had been struck by lightning. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Carmen, for her part, had lost all her previous arrogance and now looked like a shadow of herself. It's a lie, Carmen finally murmured. It has to be a lie. But Sophia, with a calmness that amazed me, took her phone out of her pocket. I have recordings, he said simply, of you two discussing the whole plan. The silence that followed Sophia's revelation was deafening. For a moment, time seemed to stop in our living room. Javier was pale as a ghost, Carmen seemed to have aged 10 years in a matter of seconds, and I felt like the ground was opening under my feet. Sophia, with a maturity that far exceeded her 15 years, took a step forward. His voice, although shaky, was filled with determination as he began to speak. A few weeks ago, she began, I noticed that Dad was acting strange. He was always whispering into the phone, quickly closing his laptop when he came into the room. At first I thought it was because of work, but something didn't add up. He paused, looking directly at me. His eyes were full of apology and pain. I'm sorry, Mom. I know I shouldn't have snooped, but I was worried. One night, when Dad forgot to lock his study, I came in. Javier tried to interrupt, but Sophia raised a hand, effectively silencing him. On Dad's desk, he continued, I found a folder. It was full of documents, Mom. Documents about our house. My heart raced. Although Sophia had already mentioned selling the house, hearing the details made it all painfully real. There were property appraisals, Sophia explained. Quotes from real estate agents. Even a draft sales contract. Everything indicated that Dad and Grandma Carmen were planning to sell the house. Our house, Mom. The home that the grandparents left us. I felt tears threatening to come, but I held them back. I needed to be strong, I needed to hear everything. But that wasn't all, Sophia continued. There were more documents. Plans for a new business in Barcelona. Budgets, financial projections. Everything indicated that they planned to use the money from the sale of the house to finance this new project. Carmen, who until then had remained silent, tried to intervene. Girl, you don't understand. Sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions for the good of the family. This business would be an opportunity for all of us. Sophia looked at her with a mixture of pity and contempt. An opportunity. Selling my mother's home without her consent is an opportunity. Javier, finally finding his voice, took a step forward. Sophia, honey, I know it seems bad, but you have to understand. Things have been difficult lately. Your grandmother is in debt, and I saw a chance to start over. To give us all a better future. A better future. I repeated, finding my voice for the first time since Sophia began her story. How can a future built on lies and betrayal be better? Sophia nodded, grateful for my support. Then, with a deep sigh, he continued his story. But that wasn't the worst of it, Mom. While I was searching for more information, I found something something horrible. I watched her struggle to find the words, and my heart broke for her. How long had she been carrying this weight alone? There were emails, he finally said. Between Dad and Grandma Carmen. They were talking about you, Mom. About how to get away from me after the house was sold. Javier paled even more, if that was possible. No, 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 he murmured. Sofia, you don't understand. That wasn't. But Sofia didn't give him the chance to continue. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone and played a recording. Javier's voice filled the room. Mom, I know it sounds drastic, but it's the only way. Once we sell the house, we can use her grief as an excuse. We'll say that she needs professional help, that she's not in a position to take care of Sofia. We'll hospitalize her for a while, just until things calm down and we can settle in Barcelona. Carmen's voice responded, It's risky, son. What if he resists? What if Sofia doesn't cooperate? They won't have a choice, Javier's voice responded. I will have full custody. It will be for your own good. The recording ended, leaving a dead silence in the room. I felt sick, betrayed on a level I couldn't even fully understand. How could you? I whispered, looking at Javier. How could you even consider separating from my daughter? Javier seemed shattered. You don't understand it, he begged. All this. It was for our good. For the future of Sofia. My mother's debts, the opportunity in Barcelona. I saw a way out. A way to give us a better life. A better life. I repeated, incredulous. Away from my daughter? Selling my parents' house behind my back? Carmen tried to intervene. Dear, I know that it sounds bad, but thinks about the possibilities. In Barcelona, with the new business, we could. Enough, I shouted, surprising everyone, even myself. I don't want to hear more lies, more excuses. I want you to leave. Both. Now. Sofia approached me, taking my hand. Sorry, Mom, he said gently. I know I should have told you before, but I was afraid. Fear that you wouldn't believe, fear of what Dad and Grandmother could do. I hugged her strongly, grateful for her courage, for her loyalty. No, my love, I whispered. You have nothing to apologize. You did the right thing. Javier took a step towards us, his face a mask of repentance and despair. Please, he begged. Let me explain. All this. I did it for love. For our family. But it was too late. The damage was done, the confidence broken irreparably. I looked at Javier, the man who once loved my daughter's father, and I only saw a stranger. Love does not betray, I said finally. Love does not lie. Love does not separate a mother from her daughter. What you did. That is not love, Javier. It's selfishness, it's greed. Carmen, seeing that the situation was completely out of control, tried a last effort. Think of Sofia, he said. In his future. In Barcelona, with the new business, we could give everything he has always dreamed of. But Sofia, my brave and wonderful daughter, replied before I could do it. The only thing I have always dreamed of, he said, is having a family that loves and respects himself. And you too have destroyed that. The silence that followed Sofia's words was heavy, loaded with contained emotions and painful truths. Javier was there, pale and trembling, his eyes moving frantically between Sofia and me, as if he desperately looking for an exit to this situation he had created. Carmen, on the other hand, had lost all her previous arrogance and now seemed to have aged 10 years in a matter of minutes. But something in Sofia's posture, in the way she squeezed her phone, told me that there was even more to reveal. My heart, already destroyed by the previous revelations, prepared for whatever it was to come. Sofia, I said gently, taking your hand, is there anything else you need to know? My daughter looked at me, her eyes full of a mixture of determination and pain. He nodded slowly. Yes, Mom, he replied quietly. There is more. Javier took a step forward, his voice trembling. Please, Sofia, it's enough. You've already said a lot. We can fix this, we can. But Sofia interrupted him, his surprisingly firm voice. No, Dad. No more lies. Mom deserves to know the whole truth. He turned to me, breathing deeply before continuing. Mom, What I told you so far is only the tip of the iceberg. When I discovered the documents and heard the conversations between Dad and Grandmother, I knew I needed more evidence. So, I began to record them. He took out his phone and, with trembling fingers, opened an application. I've been recording your conversations for weeks, he explained. Every time they talked at home, every phone call I could intercept. And what I discovered is worse than we imagined. Play pressed, and Javier's voice filled the room. Mom, we have to be careful. If she discovers the plan early, everything will come down. Carmen's voice replied, do not worry, son. Once we have it in that clinic, it will be easy to convince everyone that he needs help. His duel for his parents gives us the perfect excuse. But what if you resist? What if trying to contact someone? That's what medications are, honey. We will keep it sedated enough so that it does not cause problems. After a while, everyone will believe that it really needs to be there. The recording continued, revealing increasingly sinister plans. They talked about how my friends and family would manipulate, how they would use my pain for the loss of my parents against me, how they planned to isolate me completely. Each word was like a dagger in my heart. The man I once loved, my daughter's father, had planned to destroy my life, steal my freedom and separate myself from my only daughter. And all for money, for a business in Barcelona. When the recording ended, the silence in the room was deafening. Javier had fallen on his knees, his face a mask of horror and shame. Carmen was still, like a salt statue, unable to deny what we had just heard. Javier began, his voice just a whisper. I don't know what to say. This was not what we wanted. Things got out of control. Did they get out of control? I repeated, my voice trembling with anger and pain. Plan to go into a psychiatric clinic, drug and isolate me from my daughter is out of control? This was not a mistake, Javier. This was premeditated, calculated. Carmen tried to intervene. Listen, dear. I know it sounds bad, but we had good intentions. We wanted to give you the rest you needed, help you overcome your duel. Enough, I shouted, surprising everyone, even myself. No more lies. No more excuses. What they have done. It's unforgivable. I turned to Sophia, my brave and cunning daughter. How did you discover everything? How did you record all these conversations? Sophia looked at me, a little smile of pride peeking on her lips. I learned to hack Dad's phone, he explained. I installed an application that allowed me to listen and record all your calls. And as for conversations at home, well, let's say those electronics courses that I took last summer turned out to be very useful. I could not help feeling a wave of pride mixed with my pain. My daughter, my little girl, had risked everything to protect me. I had shown courage and intelligence that left me speechless. Sophia, I said gently, what you have done. Thank you. Thank you for protecting me, for discovering the truth. But I regret that you had to load with this weight yourself. She hugged me strongly. I couldn't let them hurt you, Mom. You and me. We are a team, remember? Javier, who had been listening in silence, finally found his voice. Please, he begged, let me explain. I know it sounds horrible, but we had good intentions. We wanted to give you a break, help you overcome your duel. And the business in Barcelona. It was an opportunity for all of us. I looked at him, unable to recognize the man who once loved. Good intentions? Does drug and locking myself are good intentions? Are I separating from my daughter for my good? No, Javier. This has no justification. Carmen, seeing that the situation was completely out of control, tried a last effort. Think about the family, he begged. In the future. We can fix this, we can start over. But Sophia, my brave daughter, replied before I could. Family? He said, his voice full of contempt. A family is not built on lies and betrayal. A family is protected, it is not destroyed. I looked at Javier and Carmen, feeling a mixture of pain, anger and, above all, determination. I want them to leave, I said firmly. Now. And don't come back. Sophia and I. We are a family. And we don't need anything else. Javier tried to take a step towards us, but Sophia got in. You heard her, Dad, he said. Go. And if you try something, if you try to hurt us in some way, I have copies of all recordings. I will not hesitate to use them. Seeing that they had no more options, Javier and Carmen collected their things in silence. While they headed to the door, Javier became a last time. Sorry, he murmured. I'm really sorry. But his words sounded hollow, empty. The damage was done, confidence broken irremediably. When the door closed behind them, Sofia and I stayed there, hugging, facing an uncertain future but together. I knew we had a long way ahead, that there would be difficult days and nights of tears. But I also knew that, while we had each other, we could overcome anything. What will we do now, Mom? Sofia asked softly. I hugged her stronger. Now, my love, we start again. You and I, together. And this time, we will build something beautiful on a basis of trust and true love. The silence that followed Javier and Carmen's departure was deafening. Sofia and I remained hugged in the middle of the room, surrounded by the suitcases and boxes that now looked like the remains of an emotional shipwreck. The world we knew had collapsed in a matter of minutes, leaving us to drift in a sea of uncertainty. Slowly, as if we woke up from a trance, we separate and look into each other. I saw in Sofia a mixture of relief, fear, and determination that probably reflected their own. Are you okay, Mom? Sofia asked, her voice just a whisper. I tried to smile, although I felt that my face could be broken at any time. I'll be fine, honey. Thanks to you. We sat on the couch, still stunned for everything that happened. The silence of the house, formerly cozy, now seemed oppressive. Every corner kept memories of a life that no longer existed, from a family that had disintegrated in the blink of an eye. What are we going to do now? Sofia asked, her voice trembling slightly. I took his hand between mine, looking for the right words. Now, my love, we start again. You and I, together. It will not be easy, but we are strong. We are a team, do you remember? Sofia nodded, a little smile by her lips. We are a team, he repeated. At that moment, looking at my brave daughter, I realized how much I had grown. Not only in stature, but in maturity and strength. I had faced a situation that would have broken many adults, and had done it with courage and cunning that filled me with pride. Sofia, I started, feeling that the words were not enough to express what I felt, what you have done. I can't even start thanking you. You have saved our home, our future. You have been braver and stronger than what that anyone could expect. She squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with contained tears. I was afraid, Mom. A lot of fear. But I couldn't let them hurt you. I couldn't allow them to separate us. I hugged her tightly, letting the tears that had finally been containing flow. I know, my love. I know it. And I regret that you had to carry all this yourself. But now we are together in this, agree? No more secrets between us. Sofia nodded against my shoulder. No more secrets, he promised. We stayed like this for a long time, hugged on the couch, letting the reality of our new situation slowly settle. The outside world seemed distant, as if our house was a bubble that protected us from chaos that surely awaited us. Finally, Sofia separated a little, looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Mom, what will happen to Dad and Grandmother? Do you think they will try something? I sighed deeply, considering the question. I don't know, honey. But we have the evidence you collected. If you try something, we will be prepared. Should we denounce them? Sofia asked, her voice full of doubt. The question took me by surprise. It was something that I had not considered in the midst of emotional chaos. We could, I replied slowly. We have evidence of your plans. But, is that what you want? Sofia was silent for a moment, thinking. I don't know, he finally admitted. A part of me wants them to pay for what they plan to do. But another part just wants to forget all this and move on. I nodded, perfectly understanding his dilemma. We don't have to decide anything now, I assured him. We have time to think, to process all this. The important thing is that we are together and safe. We got up from the couch and started touring the house, as if we saw it for the first time. Every room, every corner, seemed different now. It was no longer just the house that my parents had left us, it was the home that Sophia had saved with her courage and intelligence. "No," I said, while we entered the kitchen, "I think it's time to make some changes here. Maybe we could redecorate, make this place truly ours." Sophia smiled, her eyes illuminating with enthusiasm. "Can we paint my blue room? I have always wanted a blue room." I laughed, feeling as if a weight rose from my shoulders. "Of course, honey. Blue will be." While we planned the changes we would make in the house, I felt that we were also planning the changes in our lives. We were no longer the same people we had been that morning. We had faced an unimaginable betrayal and had come out victorious. "Mom," Sophia said, her serious voice, "do you think we can forgive Dad?" The question took me by surprise, and I took a moment to consider it. "I don't know, honey," I replied honestly. "Forgiveness is a long and complicated process. For now, I think the most important thing is to heal, it is to concentrate on ourselves." Sophia nodded, looking satisfied with the answer. "You're right. Besides, now we are only you and I against the world, right?" I smiled, feeling a wave of love and pride for my brave daughter. "You and I against the world," I confirmed. That night, while Sophia slept, I sat in the room with a cup of tea, reflecting on everything that happened. Javier's pain of betrayal was still fresh, like an open wound in my heart. But next to that pain, I felt a force that I did not know. I looked around the room, to the family photos that still hung from the walls. Heldley Times photos, when I thought we had a perfect family. Now, those photos seemed to belong to another life, to another person. I got up and began to pick up the paintings. I did not throw them, I carefully kept them in a box. They were part of our history, after all. But they would no longer define our future. Instead, I hung a recent photo of Sophia and I, smiling in the garden. It was an image of hope, of a new beginning. While preparing to sleep, I realized that, despite all the pain and betrayal, I felt grateful. Grateful for my daughter, for her courage and love. Grateful for the opportunity to start again, to build a life based on trust and true love. The way ahead would not be easy. There would be difficult days, nights of doubt and fear. But while I had Sophia by my side, I knew we could face any challenge. That night, while I fell asleep, I felt a peace that I had not experienced in a long time. Javier's world had collapsed, yes. But from its ashes, Sophia and I would build something beautiful and strong. A home, a family, a future. Together.